you got to listen to yourself. Like
Yeah.
number one, got to trust yourself. And, you know, it's not always the easiest road. It sometimes takes twice as long doing it that way, but the reward is worth it.
Congrats on the record. Tell me about this. Is my understanding of it is it's a bit of a homecoming record. Like something was drawing you back to Texas. Am I onto something?
Yeah, I think my last record was all about travel and road trips and characters you meet along the way. And then, um, it's my 10th studio album if I include my little independent record, which was the only other record I ever made in Texas. So I just felt like I was ready to go back to like the root of where everything started and the music that really got me through the last 2 decades. You know what I mean? The things that inspired me and that kind of led me home, to be honest. And I signed with Republic Records and Big Loud out of Nashville, and it just felt like with a new team, I had new inspiration, and I wanted to like start back at the root and set up the next decade for whatever's gonna come.
I guess like a lot of it's ephemeral and a lot of it's like sort of more in your soul than anything else. But is there an example you can give me of something that feels different when you record in Texas rather than somewhere else?
I have a house in Austin, and we recorded this record in Austin, and I co-produced it with John Randall, who's my collaborator on the Marv tapes, your fave.
Yeah, I love that record.
And I don't know, we didn't really have a plan. We just kind of like, let's go in the studio, let's get some Austin-based musicians. We used a lot of Austin-based musicians, and it just has a different energy. And it's not any better or any worse. It's just different than the making records in Nashville. And we didn't really have like, we just wanted to go in there with some great songs and see what happened. And it turned out to be exactly what I wanted to do. So, and it was like close to home. My family is all there, and just felt like the right call.
Growing up, a lot of Texas songwriter music played in your house?
Yes. I mean, I grew up, my dad plays guitar and writes songs, and he I'm from the 4 years old, I think I grew up around music my whole life, but 4 years old is when I started to really understand like what's happening. Like my dad's, playing guitar, and I'm like falling asleep on his lap. And it was Guy Clark and John Prine and David Allan Coe and Hag and Willie. And, that's the first music I was introduced to. So like, and some of that stuff I thought were my dad's originals before I knew, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I thought Mama Tried was one of Dad's songs. You know what I mean? But, but yeah, I mean, I guess just it's been ingrained in me since birth.
But that's a real specific style of songwriting you're talking
It
about there.
is. It really
That
is.
that like Prine, Haggard, Guy Clark. It's devastating. It'll cut you like a knife. It's also absurd and funny and strange. That's a really unique songwriting style to be raised with, Miranda.
I mean, I'm a sucker for a sad song, and I think it just started early in my life. And, you know, um, that being the first music I was introduced to, like I remember being like 10 years old, and my dad played this song called Desperados Waiting for a Train by Guy Clark. And I was like, I'm crying. And my dad's like, you get it. Like it was the first time I ever cried to a song. It's like I finally registered like, oh, this story is tragically sad. Like so, I've just always been drawn to that to this day. I'm really, and I knew when I sort of became like teenager and was thinking like maybe I want to do this, I realized like that's the kind of music I want to make.
And you knew you wanted to write. You knew you didn't just want to sing. You knew you wanted
Yeah.
to write.
I wanted to write, and I did some little demos in Nashville when I was about 16, and they were these little pop ditties, and they were cute. Um, and we got them back, and I popped in the CD, and I was like, this doesn't mean anything to me. These songs don't mean anything. They don't say anything. And so I asked my dad to teach me a couple chords on the guitar, and I was like, I feel like I have so much more to say than what these songs say. They're very sweet and bubblegum and like not who I am. And that's when I started writing.
Oh, so those weren't your songs. Those ones you did the demos for when you
No,
were.
they were my little independent record I made, Miranda Lambert. It was all my originals, but before that, I had done a few demos just to see like if I could even sing in a studio. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
16, like trying to figure out some stuff, and it just was not. I'm really glad I did that because, I think my dad spent like $3,000 on it. He was like, well, that was the cheapest lesson we could ever learn because it sets you up for the rest of your career. So like, it was like really good lesson for me to learn early of like, okay, well, that's not it. Let me go find what it is and let me see if I can write what it is.
What was the first one where you went, oh, maybe I can do this? You know what I mean? Oh, the song, whether someone else told you, maybe your dad told you, someone else told you, but like, there's, I got something here with the songwriting.
I did a contest when I was 16, 17 called the True Value Country Showdown. It was like True Value put it on. It was this big bar in East Texas, and I heard the ad for it on the radio, and I was like, I want to try it. My mom was like, all right, we'll go do it. And I sang one of my dad's original songs, and I got a lot of reaction, like people going like, she has something, like random strangers, and then like the judges. Like I didn't win for the competition, but it was like someone besides my parents or people at church finally telling me like, hey, it's better than average. Like there's something there. There's a spark. And so that's when I sort of started to get confidence and like, maybe this is something I should pursue.
Geez, your dad, what a romantic life. Like, I know he and your mom were private investigators. I'm just trying to imagine like private investigators who also write devastating country songs.
Yeah,
Is
he's there. And my dad was also a police officer in Dallas. So, honestly, that's where I got a lot of my early songs was like just seeing their business. And like, even though I was pretty sheltered in small town, it was, I could kind of see the ugly in the world from their job. You know what I mean? And that sort of gave me my first cheating songs. I was only 17. I obviously hadn't lived it yet when I started writing, but I gathered a lot of information from watching their job.
Oh, because I guess private investigators, in my mind, it's all, yeah, in my mind, it's one thing.
It's not like you think.
Yeah, I bet it's a lot of affairs. I bet it's a lot of finding
Yeah,
out if
it's a
people
lot
are.
of affairs, child custody, that kind of thing. And I just, and I guess that's where you know, that's where that's what all the songs were about that I loved anyway. So I was like, oh, I could write a cheating song. Let's go.
I don't know if you'll have an answer to this, but what is it like sitting at the dinner table with private investigator parents?
It was normal to us. I mean, me and my brother, it was normal. Like dinner conversation over spaghetti was so and so, how it went in court, and like it just was normal for us. And like even though it was a crazy to the outside world, it was like they would go to work like anybody else's parents and come home and make dinner like anybody else's parents. They just happen to be doing stakeouts instead of working at the bank,
Yeah,
you know?
I know.
Like, but honestly, it's good to have that. Like, I'm glad that I saw all that because it really gave me some fuel for those early days of songwriting for sure.
Yeah, it seems like it didn't make you cynical. Like it didn't make you cynical. It made you, gave you fodder, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
I got a question about performing. So I know you were also playing a lot of honky tonks, a lot of bars around that time. I heard stories about you getting up, begging people to play while bands were changing over. People are pulling
Oh yeah.
cables and putting amps on stage, and you're this kid, right? Like up on stage.
Yeah, I was a kid. I didn't really know that many songs on the guitar, but I was like, I'm gonna fake it till I make it. Just, I would play like while they were set changing. I'd be like, because a lot of the bars in Texas back then just didn't book girls because they're like, girls don't draw, guys don't drink beer to girl music. So I would just like say, well, can I play 3 songs while they change over the set? So there'd be like dudes around me plugging in their amps and their guitars, and I was like, I'll take it. I just needed experience. I needed to get out there. It's that old thing of like, how can I get experience if you won't give me a chance to get any? like, you know.
My favorite artists are the people who played in like dingy bars, dingy clubs, and had to work it and now play like arenas and stadiums. So, can you give me an example or like some kind of insight on what you might have learned playing in like honky tonks where people didn't care about you that you carry with you to when you play arenas and stadiums?
I played for 3.5 years and anywhere I could before I kind of got seen by the right people. But I learned everything. I mean, I learned all my chops. I learned how to make a set list. I learned how to make a show flow. I mean, I still learn. I make mistakes all the time still. I'm like, well, that song should not have followed that song, but it's too late. You're already up there. But like, it gave me my grit, man, because when there's four people in there and they could care less about what
Yeah.
you're doing up there,
Yeah.
it's like you find it within you to try to make them care. And it made me go back home and write a better song and then go back home and write a better song because I couldn't get them. And I was like, how do I get them to listen? How do I get people to stop and put their beer down for a second? And I was like, it taught me everything. That's how I got my like fire for it, you know?
Yeah, like I love that idea that even if you don't get them that night, because sometimes you don't get them. I remember
Sometimes you
what.
don't, and you still don't. I mean, sometimes a couple of weekends ago, I was like, then took me a while. I got them at the end, but it was like they made me work for it.
I remember one time opening for this kind of bigger band, and we played our whole set, and I saw this guy I knew. I saw a couple of guys that I knew in the audience during the opening set, right? And I walked in after we were done. I said, no, barely anyone clapped. Like they kept talking the whole time, like no one cared. And I went up to him afterwards and I said, hey man, how's it going? And he goes, oh hey man, when are you on?
Oh man. Hey, that's good. You know what? There's a way to keep yourself humble right there.
When are you on? And I was like, oh well, I was just on, man. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just was, but never
Yeah, I
mind.
know. You were driven, but you were driven back then. Like you were, in addition to being literally driven around in your mom's minivan, you were driven. Like you were going for it. You were showing up at radio stations. You were trying to get on the radio. You were trying to make it. When you look back at that teenager, that like really driven teenager now, like how do you feel about her?
I'm like, where did you get all that energy? I'm like, I don't know. That's such a good question because I feel like I still am that inspired and driven, but now I have knowledge. Then I was just like basing it on nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm proud of myself for like going for it. Like I didn't have a plan B. I only knew like four chords, but I was like, I'm going to do this. And it was not about anything but the music for me. It never was, and it's still not. I don't, I was really shy as a kid, and I don't necessarily like love being up on stage in front of people. Like that's not what drove it. The songs are what drove it. Like I just loved music so much, and I was like everything else came really hard for me. Like trying to learn the dances and cheerleading in high school, and like I wasn't good at academics at all. I wasn't very athletic. And so finally music was like, this is natural. It's innately in me. And I didn't want to like not appreciate and use that gift. Like once I realized I had it, and so I just went hard. And like my dad and mom sat me down, and I was like, hey, I don't want to go to college. Like I'm struggling in high school. What would I study? Like what college would I even get into? Like I want to chase this. And they were like, we will put your college fund behind you and get your equipment and all that, but like this is it. We don't have like a nest egg. Like
Yeah.
this is it. You got to make this work. And so I had no plan B, which I'm actually think also lit that fire. Like if I don't make this work, then what am I going to do? Like work at the gas station, I guess, or whatever, which would have been fine too. I don't know, but I didn't have any fear.
So how was the Nashville Star thing? So people who don't know, Nashville Star is like was like a country music American Idol. Like to me, and I'm being judgy, to me it seems like so not music to me.
Yeah.
Like how was that whole thing for you?
It's a tricky one because Idol had come out and was like on its third or fourth season, and we had Kelly Clarkson, who was from Texas, who had won, and I never auditioned for that. I didn't want to because back then it was really a lot more pop too,
Yeah.
and they didn't get to do original songs, and so I wasn't interested. I was like, no, I'm writing songs, and I want to be a songwriter more than anything. And so Nashville Star came around, and my mom's like, I mean, I was playing bars and I was making a little bit of money and I was making some traction. I was selling my little independent record out of my mom's trunk of her car, literally. We had
Yeah.
like 3,000 printed, and I was either giving them to anyone who would listen or selling them. And I was selling merch. And I mean, I was just doing the thing, but it was going to take a really long time. Like, especially because nobody was booking girls. Like, they just wouldn't in the Texas bars in that day. Like, they just
Really, hey, like they
like at
really
all.
weren't. Yeah.
They just really weren't. It was really like during the Pat Green, Jack Ingram, Charlie Robinson era, which is great. I love all those guys, and they were all good to me. But it was like clawing your way. And so was like, Mom, I don't, this competition stuff, like, it doesn't seem like, you know, is it gonna, is one good thing gonna outweigh the other? Like, competitions are usually rigged and it's on television. Is it really about the music? But what I loved about it is that they allowed you to sing an original song. And they said that you could on Nashville Star was like, we require one original song for one, at least one episode. And I was like, okay, well, that at least I would have like a platform to get seen by maybe the right people, or at least gain some fans, because I'd never been on TV before. And so I auditioned in Dallas and I picked a terrible song and I did not want to do it. So I had a bad attitude.
One of your own, or
No, I just did a cover that was, I just didn't have my heart in it.
you don't
I
want to tell me what it is, do you? You don't
No,
want to tell
I
me what the
don't.
okay.
Because I like this artist in
Okay,
this song,
okay,
but
I
it was
get
a
it.
bad choice for me. And my mom, we got in the car and she was like, I didn't even make the top 30 in Dallas out of like 300. And I was like, my mom, we got in the car. My mom was like, what was that? And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, I drove all the way to Dallas for you to go do this. We waited in line for 5 hours and you show up and you half-ass. Like, what are we doing? And I mean, she was like really mad. It was like that talking in church mom look, like, what have you done? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and so she said, you wasted my time and you owe me another audition because I'm the one that's helping you try to get these gigs and you are not being a partner. And so she just said, there's another audition in Houston and it's in 2 weeks and you need to get your head on straight. And so she drove me to Houston and I showed up and I had a better adjustment of what I was doing and like realized this is a real opportunity that could really at least get me somewhere farther than like the same bars I'm playing for $100. You know what I mean? So I showed up and did Crazy a cappella.
Like Patsy Cline crazy?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then I got to sing, they were like, play one on your guitar. I sang Two More Bottles of Wine by Emily, which I played at the bars all the time. And I won for the whole thing in Houston and secured my spot on Nashville Star. And then the first episode of the first season of Nashville Star, they put me on first. I'm like fresh off the farm. I'm like 19 years old, never been on TV, never flown to Nashville or anywhere all by myself. And I was like, what's happening? And I went out there and it was like, I knew like right then, like this is the time where you establish Miranda Lambert. And, this is like kind of such a pivotal point because it's national television. So
Yeah.
it was just such a huge learning experience for me. And I didn't win.
And you didn't want to win is what I heard.
I didn't want to win because those contracts for the winners are so locked in. And they make you have to, if you're in the top 3, you have to record a song. And I had to record a song I did not like, that I did not write. And that was going to be my first, this is me into the world, my music. And it wasn't a song I even wanted to record.
Mm-hmm.
So not winning was such a blessing because I still got a contract out of it, but I got to go make the record I really wanted to make, which was Kerosene, with the producer I wanted to make it with, which was Frank Liddell. And I got to come out of the gate being like fully myself, but that isn't the case for a lot of artists, and I don't take that for granted.
I want to play one of the first songs that really turned people's heads with you as a songwriter. I just want to take a listen to this.
I'm going home, going low with my shotgun, way by the door and light a cigarette. He wants a fire, well now he's got one, and he ain't seen me crazy yet. Slapped my face and shook me like a rag doll. Don't that sound like a real man? I'm on a show what little girls are made of, gunpowder and lead.
That's Gunpowder and Lead from Miranda Lambert. The first top 10 hit, went platinum, big song on radio. I've heard a lot of people tell me about this song. I kind of know the story. Can you tell it a little bit about where the song came from?
Yeah. So on top of all the previous things we've talked about, being private investigators and cops, my parents also took in abused women and their kids from the time I was like 14 to 17.
Like just out of the kindness of their own heart?
Yeah. We had a farmhouse and they just kind of, just with their job, they saw a lot and they sort of like felt called to like help. So we always had like women and their kids like living with us all through like 14 to 17 and all through high school, sharing my room with daughters or whatever was going on. And I really saw like firsthand what, like domestic abuse can do to a family and how devastating it is to everyone involved. And even though I, had a great childhood, I'm a great family, and it just was really eye-opening for me, especially in those 14, 15, 16-year-old, you're
Yeah.
just like kind of a sponge for everything.
Yeah.
And knowing that I was starting to write songs, I was like absorbing it all. And so all that being said, I had met this girl along the way named Heather Little, who was a great songwriter, and she was in East Texas as well. And she had been a victim of domestic abuse. And so her and I got together and we wrote this song together because she had actually lived it and I had seen it firsthand. And so, I think it's like a firecracker, badass song, but it really is about like,
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna take that. I'm not gonna lay down and take that. And so, that was a pivotal song for me. It was controversial, obviously.
Yeah.
Radio was apprehensive to play it at first because it's like kind of abrasive, obviously because of the subject. But I felt really strongly about putting it out and putting it on my record because I actually had an attachment to it. It wasn't just something I made up out of the air that I had never really dealt with.
How did your parents take it when it blew up? They must have been like proud, but
Well,
also it was something
proud.
about, yeah.
Proud for sure. Like just because, and writing it with Heather was so special to share that with her because
Yeah.
it's her story and she trusted me with it.
Yeah. Here's what I'm curious about. So like, I want to talk a little bit about Revenge Miranda in a second, which is like I've heard you talk a little bit about Revenge Miranda's back on this record, and I want to talk, if we got time, a little bit about like what it was like to be sort of a revenge associated artist for a little while, and then you kind of got rid of that pretty quickly. But I mean, Gunpowder and Lead and Kerosene and Mama's Broken Heart, and even on this new record, Wranglers, which is a great song about burning jeans. What do crowds look like when you're singing a revenge song? Like I can imagine, I know what a crowd looks like when you're singing a love song, and I know what, people are crying and holding one another. And when you're singing like a party song, people are dancing and going crazy. What does a crowd look like, especially women, a crowd look like when you're singing a revenge song like that?
I mean, they get rowdy. Like there's two parts to it. I mean, at the beginning, I really got almost pushed in a corner because I had Kerosene and I had Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and I had Gunpowder and Lead. And it felt like, all the words that were being used to describe this new artist coming on the scene was like firebrand and feisty. And
yeah, I remember that about you. I remember people writing about you that way.
And that's great. And it was me. I mean, she's a little pistol, like all that's true. But I had so much more to offer. And I was like, oh no, am I just going to be known as like this crazy girl in a corner with a shotgun forever? Like I have so much more to say as a writer and an artist. And Revolution really turned that around for me. The record Revolution and House That Built Me was a huge part of that. And, those songs like that are still such staples, and they're my bread and butter. They're staples in my show, and they're still such a part of my personality. Like I come by it naturally. Like my grandma till the day she died was drinking Crown and Coke at 1 o'clock and waving her finger at someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like my mom's very feisty and vibrant, and so I feel like come by that naturally. But as a songwriter, it's like, well, I can't be just shoved in this corner. So,
Yeah.
But all that to say, my show is a ramp up. So at the end of my set, that's what it is. I mean, it's like we're rolling by the end of it.
What are you noticing? Like, what are you seeing in the crowd when you sing those songs?
They just get passionate. They get excited and passionate. And I'm happy to have that. I'm happy to have that like rowdy, it's also playing in bars my whole child, like coming up in bars, like when they were rowdy, they were having fun. That was the whole point, so
when middle fingers are in the air, things are going all right.
Yeah, those songs are important to my set for sure.
I'm happy you mentioned House That Built Me. Can we just play a little bit of that, Gabby?
Out here it's like I'm someone else. I thought that maybe I could find myself. If I could just come in, I swear I'll leave. Won't take nothing but a memory from house that built me.
It's Miranda Lambert and House That Built Me. Rolling Stone called it one of the greatest country songs of all time. It was your first #1. I love that song. What memory comes to mind when you listen to us play that for you just then?
I'm very thankful to have that song. It's such a huge cornerstone for my career and for me as an artist. And when I heard that song, it's a prime example of why you cut outside songs, why you go listen to songs, because I felt like they written my story, and so does everybody else. That's why House That Built Me is what it is. And I really
Where were you? Where were you when you heard it?
driving down the road outside of Dallas, and I just pulled over. I mean, it was like, oh my God. And it was a demo of Tom Douglas was singing. It was just a piano and a male vocal. But man, it just was one of those like, wow, this is a magical song. And it was huge for me. And it also turned around that whole like all I am is pistols in the air with fire. You know what I mean? It really was like a pivotal time for me as an artist.
I want to play something from the new album that I really loved, and it goes to back what we were talking about in terms of being a Texas artist. I love like classic Western music. I love Texas honky tonk music. I like funny songs. I love Steve Goodman and John Prine and David Allan Coe, and I loved this song on your record. Can we just play a little bit of it?
You start stepping out. Only one thing can console me. If you're gonna leave me in San Antonio, remember the alimony.
Miranda Lambert, remember the Alamo me is one
Right.
of the most
Right.
cleverest lines I've heard in a country song since I can't remember when.
I love writing that song. I was specifically set out to write a shuffle. I love a shuffle. It's like in my bones. It's in my roots. I'm like, we need a shuffle. And I that's one of my favorite songs on the record too. So thanks for appreciating it and getting the joke, obviously.
It's so Texas, man. That's like a super Texas song.
Straight up.
So let's ask the hard question. And I'll say this. I'm from Newfoundland, which is like on the east coast of Canada. It's like an island, and it's a place that like a lot of people who talk come from there. Like a lot of people who speak for a living, write for a living, come from there. And I get a lot of questions when I do interviews of like, how has being from Newfoundland, shaped who you are and shaped how you've ended up being as a blah 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 blah. And for the longest time, I was like, I don't know. I'm just from there. I don't know. But I guess the older I get, the more I like to think about it. The more I like to think about like the people who came before me, the land I come from, the culture I came up with, the people I grew up with. So I'm going to torture you a little bit here. How do you think being from Texas has shaped you as an artist?
Man, I think I'm lucky because the mentality there and the pride, that's all one thing, but the music
Yeah.
has come out of there. Have come out of that state, all kinds of music. I feel like there was such an array and such a plethora of such talented artists of all kinds that came out of Texas. And there was also a platform. There was honky tonks everywhere. You could go play. You could go learn your chops. You could go to radio. So we have our own radio chart. Like you could go, there was a launching pad, and that's not hardly anywhere can say that. Like, country singers, we just moved to Nashville. That's our only option. Like I love, and I did, and I'm calling from Nashville today, but I don't think I would be the artist I am if I didn't come from like a place that was so saturated in great music and great songwriting, and who was really proud of all the music that we brought to the world.
Nashville country music is a city of an industry of yes. We want you to look like this. Yes. We want you to sing that song. Yes. We want you to change your sound, and we don't want you to sound like this. We want you to sound like this. Yes. You have built a very successful career, become one of the greatest, country stars of the past couple of decades, but kind of going, no. Like, hey, we want you to look like this. No. We want you to record this way. No. We want you to record that way. No. Like, I've always been most people who do that end up sort of in making the kind of music that I listen to, which is like 32,000 streams and, it's good and you're on at 2 p.m. You've managed to do that and have you know what I mean? Yeah. You've managed to have a big career doing that. Is that where that no comes from? Where does that no come from?
I think it was just so like my mom told me when I first started like really talking about doing this, 16, 17, she's like, you need to know who you are and you need to stick with it. And that has stuck with me through so many phases of my life and career. And something innately, like I just knew to trust my gut. I knew to be authentic. Like I would rather not make, I walked in my label and said, when I first signed at Sony, and I said, look, if y'all are going to try to change me or make me something that I'm not or sound like something I'm not, I'd rather just go home because I can play at home. I'm selling merch. I got a little CD. Like,
Yeah.
I think that just gave me confidence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the fact that I would like had a little something going and was playing the bars and learning myself was enough for me to not sacrifice all of that to be something that wasn't going to last because it wasn't true. And the truth will win. And I just feel so strongly for young artists coming up. Like that's my strongest advice is like you stick to who you are. And you can't, I mean, yes, you listen to your trusted advisors and your team and don't surround yourself with yes people, number one. Number two, you got to listen to yourself. Like number one, got to trust yourself. And, you know, it's not always the easiest road. It sometimes takes twice as long doing it that way, but the reward is worth it.
Well, listen, I think you're such a killer. I think I just love your music, and it's great to
Thank you. This was a great little chat. I really appreciate it. And thanks for listening. And Marvin Tapes is my favorite too. So thank you. Besides Postcards from Texas, obviously.
Let's just put out the PSA. Listen to Postcards from Texas. It's a great record. I really love it. And then listen to the Marfa tapes because that's a killer too. Miranda, lovely to meet you. Thanks for making the time.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you.